Welcome into episode 6 of The College Sports Guy. I am the College Sports Guy himself, Harris Hicks. This is our official Week 3 recap episode. And you know what? People saw the slate and they were like, hey, not a lot of good games, but you know what? Some narratives were written, some stories were told, and we learned a lot of things about a lot of teams that we're going to get to, including we're going to talk about the coaching carousel. I'm sure you know what I'm alluding to. Those in Gainesville, Florida might understand, so we'll get to that as well. But folks, in terms of the betting here, we're up 1 unit, but if you listen to the futures episode, you'd be up 3.5 units, because you know that I put a smacking $150 on Oregon against Oregon State. We had an 8% return on investment last week. Boston College came in clutch for us, and the spread handled pretty easily. Illinois, Minnesota, Ole Miss, Miami, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, Georgia State. Our moneyline long shot, that hit. We were 56% against the spread, bringing us to 39-28 against the spread on the season. I am up $637. That is close to my $1,000 per month goal. So, folks, the train just keeps rolling, as I will say. But we'll post our Week 4 picks soon, coming on now. Got a lot going on this week, but I'll make time for it. Those picks are on Spotify. My picks episodes are Spotify only. I'm trying to get the Spotify episode up and running. You can follow me on Twitter at HarrisHicks_. I post the picks as well. All of them for the slate Week 4 will be posted there. And again, guys, feel free to like and subscribe. I've really appreciated the feedback I've been getting. We're up to 350 subscribers now. So you know what? We're building this thing. It is, the train is rolling, as I will say. But we're going to get to the slate. Enough about me. We're going to talk about the stuff you came for, and that is college football. Alabama and Wisconsin. Big noon kickoff. Oh, it was a blowout. Let's just say 42-10 Alabama. Now, you know what? No one could stop talking about what Alabama had lost. Oh my gosh, Nick Saban's gone. Caleb Downs is gone. But no one focused on what they still had. Alabama this season, I have the stats right here, is first in the 247 talent composite. Despite all that they lost, they are still the most talented team according to the 247 talent composite. That was the story last offseason, was, oh my goodness, Alabama lost so much. Are they still a national championship contender? They look the part. And here's the thing about Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer is a winner. Wherever he goes, his team wins, whether that's NAIA, whether that's Fresno State, whether that's Washington. And if Kalen DeBoer took Washington, who was 26th in the talent composite, they had 27 4 and 5 stars on their team in 2023. If he can take that team to the national championship, imagine what he could do with 67 4 and 5 stars. That's right. He's got 67 at Alabama. That's a frick of a ton. And you know, I thought coming into the season, I was like, okay, Kalen DeBoer's system with the talent he has on defense, that's a recipe for a national championship. Boom. Right there. That's it. But the main question for Alabama coming into the year, who is going to be their Rome Odunze? Because you saw this receiving core, and you saw Jeremy Bernard, you saw Kendrick Law, you saw Kobe Prentice, and you're like, okay, they have a bunch of solid dudes, but who's going to be that guy? No one in a million years thought it was going to be 17-year-old Ryan Williams, who was born in 2006, 2007, I think it was. Holy crap, I can remember 2007. That is crazy. Ryan Williams is a true freshman, is averaging nearly 100 yards a game, and he has 4 touchdowns in 3 games. That was the biggest question for Alabama coming into the season. We know DeBoer had the talent. He had the talent that he never had at Washington, and it didn't matter. He took them to the national championship game. But the question was, who was going to be that Rome Odunze, that Jalen McMillan? Ryan Williams is the big play guy that Alabama needs. But this is nitpicking, because Alabama looked nothing but great against Wisconsin. And that Nick Saban leaving, I sort of thought Alabama's defense was going to take a step back with Saban gone. I didn't think their offense was going to take a hit at all. Their offense has looked great possibly even better than last year's offense, but the defense was what I thought was going to take a step back. They've looked fantastic. Their defense has looked the part. And the talent that has been on that defense with the new system, they've gelled fine. Then again, we've seen them play Wisconsin, South Florida, and Western Kentucky. We haven't seen them play that elite opponent, so the verdict is still out on that. We're going to find out in 2 weeks when they play Georgia. What a showdown that's going to be. My goodness gracious. But just a little nitpick. Who's the intermediate guy? And this was one of the questions I had for Alabama coming into the season, was who's going to be the guy when it's 3rd and 8 and you need to move the chains? Because against Western Kentucky or against Wisconsin, those runs are going to be great. You're going to get 3rd and 2s and 3rd and 3s. But on a 3rd and long, who's going to be that guy that can sustainably move the chains for Alabama? Is it Jeremy Bernard? Because Alabama lacked that last year, and it costed them against Michigan. That's the main question. But nonetheless, look, the offensive system's there. The defense is there. Alabama is a bona fide national championship contender. They are. They've proven it. They've destroyed bad teams outside of South Florida where they have struggled. But you know what? It's possible that Alex Golesh might just be Alabama's kryptonite. Everyone has one. And Golesh beat Alabama in 2022. Granted, he had more talent as Tennessee's offensive coordinator. He really messed with them in 2023, and it's the same thing in 24. It might be the same thing. So I like where Alabama is, and they answered one of their biggest questions, which is who's going to be that guy? Who's going to be that Rome Odunze that Kalen DeBoer's had? Ryan Williams looks like he's going to be the part. And Alabama fans, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn because Ryan Williams is 17 years old, so he's going to be around for a long, long time. Crimson Tide roll. Wisconsin, it is unfortunate to see TVD getting hurt. Their QB woes continue. They got destroyed. And Luke Fickell said it best. It hurts when you get a butt whipping like that because, man, they've got some issues to fix for sure in Madison. This game that I want to talk about, LSU 36, South Carolina 33. You may see the scoreboard and say, oh, good win for LSU. LSU got lucky. First off, South Carolina, LSU, this was one of the spreads I was wrong on. I gratefully underestimated South Carolina. I'll say I really did. I didn't think that they were going to get a consistent passing game. And you know what? When you have Lenore Sellers and Rocket Sanders, I'm not sure if you even need one because they average 6 yards a carry. The run game's awesome. They bullied LSU in the trenches. And usually the team who wins in the trenches is going to win the game unless if your starting quarterback gets hurt, which is exactly what happened in South Carolina. So you asked me, you see the scoreboard, you're like, oh, good win for LSU, but I mentioned LSU got lucky. I stand by that because South Carolina in the first half did not punt one time. Lenore Sellers had over 200 total yards and two total touchdowns in the first half. LSU couldn't stop South Carolina's offense. And all of a sudden, Lenore Sellers gets hurt, and Robbie Ashford has a 3.9 QBR in the second half. And the only touchdown that was scored for South Carolina was when LSU fumbled near the red zone, and South Carolina happened to get it there and score in the second half. The only touchdown they scored in the second half, that is. So South Carolina is better than I thought. And Lenore Sellers, watching him in person, I'll say this, it's really like watching Jalen Milroe as a runner, to where he doesn't have this wiggle like a Lamar Jackson or someone like that, but he's got this straight line speed and this acceleration that is just ridiculous. When he takes off, he takes off. And that LSU safety help is a real concern because when someone gets out into that open field, man, the amount of explosive plays that South Carolina had on the ground in the first half, LSU's got some issues. And to me, it looks like the same team as last year. It really does. But the difference is if you take out an elite generational quarterback like Jaden Daniels and you sub in a very good quarterback, which the tier between what Jaden Daniels is doing compared to what Garrett Nussmeier is doing. Garrett Nussmeier is a good player. He's proven himself. He's been awesome for LSU. He is not the issue. He is the solution, if anything, in Baton Rouge. But when you average 10 yards a pass attempt to 8, when you're completing 76% of your passes as opposed to 68, 69, That's a drop-off. And with this defense and this run game, man, this run game is lacking because coming into the season, with what LSU had in the trenches, and this O-line has been great. Nuss has been extremely protected. Against South Carolina, he was protected pretty well. With John Emery, LSU ran the ball super well against USC. He gets hurt, and they don't seem to have that explosive back. Maybe someone emerges, but right now, averaging just 4.1 yards per carry on the ground compared to 6 for South Carolina. And so this is a team, when you have a run game that hasn't quite figured it out, and you have a defense that is getting absolutely shredded in the trenches and in the secondary, you all of a sudden need Garrett Nussmeier to be like CJ Stroud level instead of like Kyle McCord level. And I'm not saying Garrett Nussmeier is Kyle McCord. That's not what I'm saying. The analogy is if LSU wants to win 10 to 11 games, Garrett Nussmeier can't just be a very good college quarterback. He needs to be a Heisman candidate because this defense won't allow it. This defense is not good enough. We've seen it. Unless something changes, it's just not. The run game isn't what it was last year. I'm not sure it can support it. And South Carolina, man, they ran the ball down LSU's throats. They did. And 99% of the time, if you win the game in the trenches like South Carolina did, you'll win the war. You will. That's it. And South Carolina would have probably won the game if Lenore Sellers hadn't gotten an ankle injury, which sucks for South Carolina fans. Like, that is a tough break. Because that place, Williams-Brice, man, was rocking. That is one of the most underrated, underappreciated atmospheres in SEC football. Like, those towels waving and all that, and those fans going crazy, and the lights when someone scores a touchdown going in and out. That home field advantage, man, they bring it in Columbia. They bring it. So if you're South Carolina, hey, you know what? It was a rough way to lose a game. It's unlucky. You were probably the better team. You probably deserved to win that game. But you've got a redshirt quarterback who looks very good right now. Future's bright in Columbia. They are building something. They're recruiting better too. Top 20 class coming in right now. Something's building up in Columbia right now. If you're LSU, you've certainly got issues to fix, even though they came out of that game barely with the W. Georgia beat Kentucky 13-12. Closer game than a lot of people were expecting, especially with that spread. And I looked at that spread, thought to instinctively bet Georgia. Oh, Georgia spread against Kentucky. Well, they're probably going to kill them. Then I realized the trouble that Kentucky has given Georgia. Remember, it was 16-6 in 2022. In 2020, it was close too. Like, Kentucky gives Georgia trouble. And I don't know what it is, but it's just there. And a lot of people, look, Georgia got outgained. Kentucky had 11 more first downs. If you play like the win expectancy or whatever it be, Kentucky probably wins the game over 5 times out of 10. That is, of course, just strictly analytics and not anything else involving the teams. I understand that. I'm not too concerned about Georgia. And a lot of people were after their performance against Kentucky. A lot of people are going to say, ooh, Georgia, man, they might be a little bit behind this year. Look, last year, they beat Auburn 27-20. They beat Mizzou 30-21. They went 12-1. Didn't matter. 2022, I mentioned they beat Kentucky 16-6. That was a closer game than the scoreboard indicated as well. They won the national championship. 2021, remember that game against Clemson? They won 10-3. It was really close, and Clemson almost won that game. One possession game. Didn't matter. Georgia won the national championship. Before people rush to conclusions, understand that this is not new territory for Georgia. This is the league that the SEC is. This is the difference from the SEC to any other league, is that you have that top echelon that the Big 12 doesn't have, but the lower tier can go out and compete with that top echelon, unlike the Big 10. This is what the SEC is. And Kirby said it. That is a good football team. That is an SEC football team. You don't judge an SEC football team by 1 week. I think people were really, really quick to say, oh, man, Kentucky looked really bad against South Carolina. Man, if they look bad against South Carolina, they're going to get hammered by Georgia. Don't ever judge an SEC team based off 1 week. Kirby Smart said it. He's right. This is a really good Kentucky team. Stoops has done awesome things there. Multiple 10-win seasons, constant winning season after winning season there. Not a team to be underestimated. Look, if I see it again from Georgia, and they got a brutal schedule where you play Texas, you play Ole Miss, and you play Alabama all on the road and Tennessee at home, like that's probably, 4 top 6 teams? Like right there. So it's a really hard schedule. I still think they can muster through it. I still think they could win 11 games with that schedule. I do. Because this is a coach who is, Kirby Smart is undefeated the last 3 years against any coach not named Nick Saban. Nick Saban's out of the picture. I trust Georgia going forward. So I will hold my concerns about Georgia. Next up, Florida fans. Oh my goodness, Florida fans. Oh, Texas A&M beating Florida 33-20. This was a way bigger blowout than the scoreboard indicated. A&M dominated the trenches, and I put this lightly. We're going to spend a lot of time on this game. Texas A&M dominated. 55 carries for 310 yards, 5.6 yards per carry. Florida, 25 carries, 52 yards. Texas A&M had more carries than Florida did yards for the game. 2.1 yards per carry as a team. And a lot of people are saying, oh man, we needed, Florida fans, to do away with Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz is the problem. Graham Mertz is the problem? Did you see your team run for 52 yards on 2 yards a carry? Graham Mertz actually played not too bad. He was 12 for 15, 195 yards, 13 yards a pass attempt. Graham Mertz is not the problem. There are so many problems in Gainesville that it's one of those things where you have so many issues you can't even begin to focus on one. And hey, Texas A&M, maybe they found their answer at quarterback. Maybe that helped them. Maybe this is a different team than what they showed against Notre Dame, because that team looked, they bullied them. Look, like I said, here's the theme here. Football's a war, and the trenches decide it. And this game was over from the moment the ball was snapped, regardless of the rain delay. And A&M didn't need their starting quarterback to win the game. Didn't matter. Le'Veon Moss ran all over Florida, and Florida in no way could stop it. Alrighty, now, folks, last but not least, we're going to ask the dreaded question in Gainesville. The question that everybody is wondering. Is it time for Billy Napier to go? Is it time for Florida to make a change? Look, I'm going to clarify this. Fans are too quick to say the coaches should be fired. If fans and message boards with the GMs, then Nick Saban would have gotten fired after losing to Louisiana Monroe. It's true. Fans make the worst GMs. So I never want to be, and if I am, you guys can call me out on it. I never want to be the guy who's saying that this coach should be fired prematurely, because it's a really sensitive subject, because this is how these coaches put food on the table. It's different for the coach than it is for the fan whose team he happens to root for just lost 41-7 or whatever it may be. So I understand that. But I do want to say, continuation is the most underappreciated thing in college football. It is. In the era of the transfer portal where people come and go and stay or whatever it is, and you have so much roster turnover year after year after year, staying with a guy, even if it's a head coach, you can just have an automatic leg up over your competition by just doing that one thing. So I always say give a coach 3 years. Situations vary, but for the most part, a coach should get 3 years. But Billy Napier has 2 losing seasons, and there is likely a third coming. And so the second thing you pivot to is, okay, well, the success hasn't been there. Well, what direction are they heading into, Harris? Well, their 2025 recruiting class rank right now is 22nd. That's good for any conference. Any other conference, that is a good spot to be in. Not the SEC. That's 10th in the SEC. Look, at any other coaching job, I would say, you know what? Maybe he should get time. Maybe not. But the University of Florida is one of the best coaching jobs in college football. When you're a coach looking to coach somewhere, you have all these schools offering you, and to weigh the offers on the table, you look at three things. One, brand. The University of Florida is an established SEC brand. They have 3 championships in the last 25 years. They have 8 conference titles. They've produced multiple Heisman winners. This is a big established brand. 2, revenue. The University of Florida last year generated $100 million in their football program. That's top 15 in the country. And they did that with a losing season. Like, imagine what it could be if they're winning all of a sudden. And those ticket sales are through the roof. So they have the brand. They have the revenue. The third thing is location. The thing that possibly matters most. It may not matter as much as it used to, but it still really matters. You wonder why Wyoming doesn't get 4- and 5-star recruits, or New Mexico? Well, I mean, there are no recruits, blue chip prospects that ever come out of Wyoming and New Mexico. Florida is home to the most blue chip prospects since 2000. The state of Florida has produced the most blue chip prospects, blue chip meaning 4- and 5-star prospects, since 2000, according to 247 Sports. This is a prime location. And not only that, they border the state of Georgia, which is home to the 4th most blue chip prospects since 2000. They also border Alabama. So, it's one of the lineman capitals of football. Alabama, the state of Alabama and Mississippi breeds linemen. So Florida has the brand. They have the revenue. They have the location. This job, and the reason why I bring this up is because I've heard people say that Florida isn't a good coaching job anymore. No, it is. Because before Spurrier got there, Florida was a sleeping giant. They just needed the right man at the wheel to figure it out. And he figured it out. He put Florida on the map. Urban came. We saw what he did. 2 national championships in 3 years at Florida. It's a sleeping giant. It's a ticking time bomb. And if they get this one right after Napier, potentially after Napier, I mean, it's not official yet, this could be one of the faces of the sport, just like they used to be. And man, it all comes down to this. Why did Florida fire Dan Mullen 3 years ago? Because in college football, this feast or famine mentality takes over these fans to where these fans will go on message boards and tweet their thoughts and say, we need this coach fired. We're going to quit donating money. We're not putting any NIL money into this anymore. And all of a sudden, well, the school is like, okay, it's a business in the end of the day, and we are not getting what we should out of this, so we have to fire the coach. Fans can be the worst GMs, and like baseball, fans have a huge say in this. In 2017, Florida went 4-7. Dan Mullen takes over. You know what he does? A 10-win season in 2018, and you'll see what I'm getting to by this point. A 10-win season in 2018. He won 11 games in 2019, his second year. His third year, he went to an SEC championship game. He was 8-2. That was the COVID year. Florida had a 5-game losing streak against Florida State, their biggest rival. Dan Mullen gets there. You know what he does? He goes unbeaten against FSU. Dan Mullen was undefeated against Tennessee. You cannot say the same with Billy Napier. The only Georgia win in the last 7 years for Florida belongs to Dan Mullen. He was the OC at Utah in 03 and 04, put Alex Smith on the map. He goes to Florida, 05 to 08, 2 top 5 offenses, a Heisman winner, 2 national titles. He leaves in 09, and I get it, Tebow left too. You know what happens to Florida when he leaves in 09? They implode. You think Florida would have learned their lesson the first time, huh? After losing him as their offensive coordinator and seeing what happened? Dan Mullen, I'm still on the rant because I'll get to the point. Goes to Mississippi State. He had 1 winning season. Mississippi State had 1 winning season in the 8 years prior to when he got that job. You know what he does there? 4 9-win seasons in 9 years. Mississippi State was ranked number 1 in the AP poll at one point. I repeat, Mississippi State was ranked number 1 in the AP poll at one point. And you may say, 4 9-win seasons, 9 years, that's okay. Did you know Mississippi State had 5 9-win seasons in their 120-year history before Dan Mullen got there? 5 in 100-plus years. He gets there, gets 4 in 9 years. Because Mississippi State's in the SEC West, where they are getting significantly less funding, or was in the SEC West, now might I say, significantly less funding than any of their counterparts. And Dan Mullen was competing with these schools. Mississippi State was probably in a better spot than Florida was in the 2010s. That's because of him. Anyway, long story short, feast or famine mentality that fans have can ruin programs. And if you're the University of Florida, I'm not looking at Billy Napier necessarily. I'm not looking at the players. I'm not looking at the boosters. You know who I'm looking at that's hurt this program? You, the fans. Because the fans have a massive say in who gets hired and who gets, not so much who gets hired, who gets fired, especially. And I use this because this feast or famine mentality that I'm talking about, meaning feast, it's either you win the national championship or it's a complete bust, or we don't want this guy anymore because he can't win championships year in and year out. And to that, I say this, Florida, ask Nebraska. Bo Pelini had 7 9-win seasons in 7 years. He got fired after that. 7 9-win seasons in 7 years. You know how impressive that is? That's a lot of consistency. Multiple Big 12 championship appearances. Nebraska's made 1 bowl game since he's gotten fired. That was like 8-9 years ago. Now that's obviously going to break, but that 8-9 years was rough for Nebraska football. Ask Auburn. Auburn was 3-5 against Nick Saban with Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn beat Nick Saban 3 times. Do you know how hard that is to beat Nick Saban 3 times in 8 years? Kirby Smart hasn't even done that. Look, I grew up in Tennessee. I grew up going to Tennessee games, okay? I watched Tennessee lose to Nick Saban for 14 straight years. Gus did it 3 times in 8 years. Gus took Auburn to a national championship game. Auburn had 0 winning bad typo. Auburn had 0 losing seasons with Gus Malzahn. Auburn's had 0 winning seasons since they fired him. Ask Auburn on that feast or famine mentality. Miami, I'm going to take y'all back here on a trip down memory lane that is beyond my generation, but the generations older than me will get what I'm saying. Larry Coker, not sure if you know that name. He was the head coach of the 2001 Miami Hurricanes, known in a lot of circles as the greatest college football team of all time. He got fired in 2006 after having a 6-win season. He had 6 9-win seasons in 7 years. I have it in my notes right there, just making sure I got it right. He had a national championship. He had 4 10-win seasons in 7 years. 6 9-win seasons in 7 years. 1 6-6 season. You know what happens? Boom, fired. You want to know what Miami dealt with since he got fired? They had a 1 10-win season in 18 years. Larry Coker had 4 7 in a national championship. So this is a message to all the fans, all the those Penn State fans that are saying we need to fire James Franklin. To all those Clemson fans that are saying we need to fire Dabo. Whoever it may be, tread lightly. Because if you say you should fire those coaches, I hope you have a better plan. I hope you have a better plan, man. Because, again, Miami, Auburn, Nebraska, now Florida. Add them to the list. Feast or famine mentality and fans can kill programs. They can destroy them. And right now, what we are looking at with Billy Napier is a prime example of that. Because those Florida boosters claim that Mullen wasn't recruiting enough, even though he had multiple 10-win seasons and an SEC championship appearance, went undefeated against FSU, beat Georgia, but he's not recruiting well enough. Top 10 classes Mullen had, by the way. Maybe it's not, Alabama level, but Florida historically is not Alabama level. 3 national Alabama is, oh my gosh, I've lost track now. 18? 16? I should know the number. I really should. Need to do better there. But anyway, not quite there. So, feast Feast or famine mentality can lose programs and can kill programs. And you know what? University of Florida is an example of that. And on that note, that's going to wrap up this episode. It was a pretty fiery episode. It was a pretty quick episode, but you know what? I enjoyed it. The picks will be posted later this week, folks. Thank y'all so much for listening. It truly means the world. Again, we're up to 350 subscribers. We're going to keep it going. Yeah, be sure to like and subscribe. And thank y'all so much for the engagement. And cue that music.